This is Driving Solutions, exclusively on CPTnews.com.
Hi everyone, I'm Cheyenne Malone.
And I'm Jim Fitzpatrick. Selling cars and trucks online with automotive e-commerce is a reality. It's here, but many dealers I speak with are confused about whether this is good for their business.
Here today to discuss the economics of e-commerce is Paulo da Silva, Vice President of Operations over e-commerce at Cox Automotive. Welcome and thanks so much for joining us, Paulo.
Thank you. It's great to be here again.
First off, could you talk to us about, just help our viewers and our audience understand how e-commerce fits in the digital retailing space?
Absolutely. And it's a great place to start, by the way, Cheyenne, because it's really critical to understand that digital retailing encompasses both enhanced leads as well as e-commerce. And so I would think of enhanced leads as the capability that your audience is very used to utilizing their own websites, right? Starting a deal online, penciling a deal online, but eventually transitioning into a store interaction, right? And your internet sales team would work with the consumer to structure that deal and finance the deal and so on. Whereas in e-commerce, you start the deal online, but you also continue to progress that deal through 100% online or most of it online through insurance product selection, financing, contracting, and delivery. And consumers can do that at their own pace, which is very different than enhanced leads in general. And what makes that possible is the progress we've made with AI in automating financing and contracting steps. And those interactions with store people still take place. You know, the consumer wants to have questions addressed, and perhaps the consumer may have a challenging credit situation. And in that case, you will need that interaction. But overall, the intent in e-commerce is to give agency to consumers. Now, think of these as two different consumer segments. Some folks want to start the deal online, but eventually need to talk to someone and get some advice and perspective. Maybe have credit that is challenging and they want to structure a deal. And some other folks want to do their deal 100% online without having to talk to anyone. We all know those people that just want to text and finalize a deal that way. And I would think of both as complementary, and both should be channels in your channel strategy if you want to grow in the future.
So you spoke about consumer experience and what different segments of consumers want. Is e-commerce good for dealers, though?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There are a number of reasons why, Jim, but I would say three off the top of my head here. Number one, e-commerce is great for reaching new markets. You know, think about the ability to do long distance retailing without necessarily having to invest in your physical store footprint. We know how buy sales can be expensive, and we know how building new infrastructure is expensive. And so e-commerce is a great way to get that scale. Secondly, I would think about it in terms of F&I efficiency. It's the ability to use automation, particularly for prime and super prime consumers, to reduce the amount of effort that your F&I team has to put into working a deal. And finally, I would think of as a final benefit, consumer satisfaction. We see the highest consumer satisfaction levels in the e-commerce channel relative to just about any other channel you may have in your strategy. So that drives consumer loyalty, that drives brand equity, and we know how important that stuff is.
And how do you back that up?
I knew a question would come about data. I know you guys are really into your data, and I'm glad to give you a few data points to help you with that. Number one, in terms of new markets, I would think if you were to look at overall all transactions that we have in our experience flowing through Cox Automotive's e-commerce platform, about half deals are done with consumers that are outside of a 65 miles perimeter around the footprint of our clients. And about a quarter of those deals actually happen 250 miles and beyond. So think about the ability to go to those markets without necessarily having to invest in stores in those locations. Secondly, you'll think of on the F&I efficiency side, what we see depending on the consumer credit profile, that automation of financing and contracting could get you up to 90 minutes worth of work that you reduce in your F&I office as well as your salespeople. And finally, from a consumer satisfaction standpoint, this is one of the ones that I'm most excited about, because if you take all Google reviews for all deals across all of our clients in our 2 years worth of experience, our average 5-star review is 4.9 out of 5. So think about the impact to your brand and to your consumer loyalty that something like that brings to the table. And frankly, we're seeing repeat business with our clients, where consumers go through the experience and love it so much they want to come back and buy more cars that way. So we think it's really powerful, and the data, I think, tells a lot about the opportunity at hand.
Paulo, those are certainly impressive statistics for sure. One of the concerns that I always hear from dealers about e-commerce is that profitability is going to be lower than that of in-store transactions. What are you seeing in your experience?
That's a question that I get a lot as well, Jim, because I think folks immediately associate internet transactions with lower profitability.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to tie it to gross per unit, which I think is a language that we all speak, right? So take client averages, not necessarily an individual client, but across all of our clients. When you look at the front end, e-commerce effectively offers no negotiation on prices. And so for a like-for-like copy, for a like-for-like vehicle, you're looking at effectively either the same front end as you would realize in store, or better if you're negotiating in store. Mm-hmm. Now, your mix in e-commerce may be different, right? You may be selling different kinds of cars online versus in store, and you may see an overall average that is different. But at a car level, the front end is the same. And then on the back end, I think the biggest thing that people are concerned about, or clients are concerned about, is insurance product attachment. And if you were to look at the data we have so far, nearly half of transactions have at least one insurance product attached. Now, that's the work of technology and I providing the right recommendations to consumers, but it's also the work in harmony with F&I managers who are not afraid to pick up the phone and call a consumer who may not have selected any product to have a conversation about what they may be missing out and perhaps some of the value that the consumer could find in insurance products that you offer. Mm-hmm. So net, if you take a step back, Jim, your average gross per unit for e-commerce, when you compare it to your in-store gross per unit, we find that on average, you're going to be within a couple $100, give or take, which I think is really promising given just how early the technology is, right? There's a lot more that we can improve in the coming years.
Yeah, for sure.
Makes sense. Too, Paulo, when you think about interest rates, right, and affordability being a big concern here for dealers, I can see why the accuracy and efficiency in finding lenders to fund a deal would be absolutely an advantage, right? And then the fact that the whole process becomes now quicker and more satisfying for everyone involved, there's no one really that doesn't want that, right? Seamless process. In our final moments, and your advice to others and dealers is what I'm talking about here, who are considering maybe making that move to auto e-commerce, but haven't yet done it, right? They're on the fence. What advice do you give to push them one way or another?
Yeah, I think ultimately e-commerce is knocking at your door at the moment, right? We're in the early stages of the adoption curve, but we're about 12 to 18 months away from transitioning from this early adopter stage, if you will, to this mainstream stage where a lot of dealerships are going to adopt the technology. We're starting to see that pretty drastically in our business. And every dealer is different, and whether it's right for you to jump in now or jump in a little later depends on some characteristics that I think define who are the most successful with this technology. So if your dealership uses centralized decision making, right? If you make decisions across multiple roofs, if you use market-based pricing, if you're comfortable and interested in expanding long distance retailing, if you are able to assign accountability of the channel for e-commerce to a senior leader who's going to drive it. And ultimately, if you're looking at this as a way to grow your business in the future, not necessarily a way to make ends meet tomorrow, right? But you have a bigger long-term perspective at play. If you hit those things, I would say you're a great candidate to jump in right now. And if you look at the data we have, 92% of shoppers in research tell us that they want to either complete their next car purchase entirely online or through omnichannel. So I think that now is the opportunity to jump in and be part of that first wave of disruptors that are really shaping the future of online car buying.
Great advice from Paulo da Silva, Vice President of Operations for e-commerce at Cox Automotive. Thanks so much for being here and sharing the economics of automotive e-commerce with us and our dealer audience. Thanks so much.
I appreciate the opportunity. It was great to see you again.
Great.
Thanks.
You too.
Thanks for watching Driving Solutions, exclusively on CPTnews.com.